Hello again. It's been a hot minute, hasn't it? I've been holding off talking about Sniper for a while since he probably has the most changes coming into TC2, and also the fact I'm not great at him. I'll try to be objective when discussing the stat changes, but do take everything I say with a grain of salt this time around. The stock sniper rifle saw the biggest changes coming from TF2, and for good reason. Almost all of the TF2 community unanimously bands together to shit on this thing. You can plop yourself almost anywhere and kill any class from any range. Even up close, a quickscope could secure a kill. And the worst part is, most players won't even know you're there until it's too late. In TC2, all sniper rifles have a few changes that make quickscoping and positioning harder. Shots deal 10% less damage than in TF2, 45 instead of 50. So a fully charged body shot or uncharged headshot does 135, while a charged headshot still hits for 450. Quickscoping or shooting under 40 studs gives a 20% damage penalty, dropping an uncharged headshot to 108. For comparison, here's what 40 studs looks like in-game. Scoping has around a 2-frame startup. There is a massive laser showing your line of sight when scoped in, and you now have to manually reload. Overall, I think they did a solid job with these changes. The laser and manual reload punishes Marksman for brainless positioning or weapon swaps, while giving others more chances to avoid his sightlines or punish him. The 45 damage shots forces Marksman to commit to charging instead of just headshotting everyone, and the quickscope penalties, well, I don't mind quickscoping in TF2, so while I think TC2 went a bit far with the quickscope nerfs, it's still strong. You just need to follow up with another hit instead of instantly winning with a headshot. So, nice work TC2, you actually made a meaningful balance change. The Huntsman is also pretty notorious in TF2, but for a different reason. Most of you probably know this already, so I'll keep it short. It's a bow that fires projectiles instead of hit-scan bullets. The catch is that projectile hitboxes are just one big rectangle around the character, unlike the smaller segmented ones hit-scan uses. So if an arrow even comes close to the head on that big box, it snaps to a headshot automatically. Thankfully, TC2 fixes this by giving arrows proper hitboxes, so you actually need to hit the head for a headshot. That alone makes the weapon fairer to fight and more skill-based to use. And, in classic TC2 fashion, there's a bunch of minor stat tweaks. Arrows can only be held for 3 seconds instead of 5 before they lose accuracy. Drawing slows you down by 33% instead of 47%, and arrows cannot be air blasted. The faster movement but shorter draw time feels like a fair trade, since you can close gaps quicker but have less time to shoot. The no air blast change is whatever. Overall, the hitbox fix is the biggest improvement and makes the Huntsman a lot more interesting to play with and against. Here it is, the weapon everyone hates for body shotting, even though the Sydney Sleeper exists. Once fully charged, the Machina deals 15% more damage, or 173 on a body shot, and penetrates players. The trade-off is you can't fire unless scoped, and every shot leaves a tracer, so no scoping is out of the question and your position is easier to spot. Still, if you're doing your job as sniper well, it performs just fine. But the real upside is that collateral fanfare. Oh my god, I can still hear that sweet. The Model IV in TC2 gets a couple minor stat tweaks. Fully charging takes half a second longer, and charged shots no longer deal 15% more damage. Instead, you now deal 34% more damage to buildings, hitting for 60 to 180 instead of 45 to 135. The tracer downside also matters less since every sniper rifle has a giant laser anyways. I actually quite like the direction they took for this. Sniper has always had the angles to pressure engineer nests, but his slow reload and engineers hiding behind buildings made it tough to keep up with repairs. Now, being able to hit both the engineer and his buildings at the same time gives the weapon a clear role beyond just collateral shots. Now, the real king of body shots, the Sydney Sleeper. This rifle leans more towards support, applying durability for 2 to 5 seconds on a scoped hit depending on charge. It also charges 25% faster and can extinguish teammates. However, headshots only deal mini crits, though they reduce Girardi cooldown by a second. This weapon can't match the raw power of the other rifles, so you're mostly picking off low health targets or applying Girardi on bigger ones, which begs the question, why not just kill them yourself with any other rifle? Not a bad weapon, just outclassed. How TC2 tackles this is by borrowing an earlier version of the Sydney Sleeper. The Sour Shots applies lemonade for up to 8 seconds instead of 5, and causes a small lemonade explosion that also douses nearby enemies on a headshot or fully charged shot. And for our 2-0 stats, it reloads a bit slower, but can crit a headshot on already doused targets. TF2's version struggled because it only worked well on single targets, which other rifles already excelled at. With this added crowd control niche, it finally fulfills its support role effectively, so good job. Well gang, we made it to the Bad Weapon Academy, the one and only. I'm honored. The Classic's gimmick is that you can charge and fire shots without scoping. You can waddle around charging, then scope in, or try for a flashing no-scope. What's the catch? Well, no headshots unless fully charged. You can't fire mid-air or underwater, and body shots deal 10% less damage. Fun fact, waiting 4.5 seconds before you can do your job as sniper? Yeah, not great. Moving into TC2, the Classic now has a flat 12% damage penalty instead of the old 10% body shot penalty, and it can headshot at any charge level. And unfortunately, the 20% damage penalty under 40 studs and quickscope still applies. And that's it, no other changes. These tweaks take the weapon from gimmick hell to actual viability, letting you keep your field of vision without needing to wait a year between each shot. A simple but effective improvement. And again, a controversial one, the Girardi, now called the Lemonade in TC2, because we can't have good things on Roblox. NSFW avatars are running rampant, yet I get banned for renaming a lever shotgun into Femboy Simulator. Real smooth. Where was I? Oh yeah, Girardi. You can throw it to coat enemies in piss for 10 seconds, causing them to take mini crits, which means a 35% damage bonus with no fall off. It can also extinguish yourself or teammates, reducing the cooldown from 20 to 16 seconds. Long story short, AoE mini crits and instant melee crits on a short cooldown is incredibly strong, especially for a supposed long-range single-target class. So, did we fix it? Maybe? So, TC2 makes the debuff duration splash dependent, ranging from 3 to 5 seconds depending on where you get hit. Extinguishing teammates now reduces the cooldown by a whole 10 seconds and also restores 50 health. However, the weapon deploys 15% slower and will also coat you if you're caught in the splash. These changes make it less of an AoE tool since you actually have to aim and coordinate with your teammates. Additionally, you can't instantly win a melee fight now that you're coated in Lemonade. In a vacuum, it's a solid nerf that makes the weapon fairer to fight against. However, in practice, the Lemonade rarely finds use since the Bushwhacker was also nerfed into the ground. So is it a good change? Yeah. Sniper's only SMG unlock is unfortunately not great. The Cleaner's Carbine has a 20% clip size penalty, a 25% slower firing speed, and no random crits, making it feel very clunky overall. Its saving grace is the Craigie meter. Deal 100 damage with this to activate the meter and get mini crits on all weapons for 8 seconds. Fully charged Huntsman body shots can one-shot light classes, and the Bushwhacker becomes a killing machine. The problem? Hitting 100 damage with a bad SMG is hard, and you need to be in perfect position to capitalize off Crikey. Overall, it's a very luck-reliant weapon. The suppressed solution in TC2 has a 33% clip size penalty and a 45% slower firing speed, compared to TF2's 20% and 25% respectively, nerfing it even more. The only buff is a 15% damage increase, raising its base damage from 7 to 8. Wow. All of this is on top of the Huntsman and Bushwhacker being harder to use. This weapon was clunky in TF2 and is now awful in TC2. They somehow managed to nerf a weak weapon. Incredible. Ooh, backpack items. I'll breeze through these since talking about them is as boring as using them. The Razorback blocks one backstab every 30 seconds, stunning the spy for 2 seconds. However, you can't be overhealed. In TC2, having the shield active gives 7% faster movement speed and a 20% reduction in speed penalty while charging. At least to me, the movement barely matters for Sniper, and you're still mostly picking this to counter spies, so whatever. The Darwin's Danger Shield is, well, let's just say I really don't like pyros today. It grants a 50% fire damage resistance and afterburn immunity, mostly just in response to the Scorch Shot. In TC2, the Turtle Rock slightly reduces the fire damage resistance and adds 10 max health, letting you survive 2 melee swings in a vacuum. I say a vacuum because you're likely going to take some chip damage in game, meaning you still usually die to 2 melee swings. Additionally, the Scorch Shot isn't even in this game, so I don't know why this item exists. It barely changes anything, but still screws over Pyro. For melees, I'm actually going to talk about random crits for once. One common complaint about Sniper is that he gets them a lot. Random crits scale with damage, and Sniper can rack up plenty of that in one life. That means a class weak at close range has an up to 60% chance to delete you instantly. TC2 removes random crits, making it much safer to kill Marksman up close. Not a direct Sniper change, but it makes him fairer to fight. Another notorious one, the Bushwhacker. Very simple concept. You get crits when you normally mini crit, but you lose random crits and you have a 20% damage vulnerability, giving you an effective 100 health. This weapon wouldn't be a big deal if Sniper didn't have instant mini crits every 20 seconds, but he does, so it's annoying. TC2 nerfs this thing hard. The Lemon Blade has a 25% damage penalty, hitting only 147 on a crit, fires 20% slower, and increases the damage vulnerability to 30%, lowering your effective health to 87. Coupled with the Girardi nerf, the Lemon Blade is now a high-risk, mediocre reward weapon. Is it worth running this over the consistency of stock? Not really. I think the Bushwhacker probably needs a complete rework instead of a tweak, and this proves exactly why. It's still frustrating for light classes, but for anyone else it's a free kill, so a mediocre change. And last but not least, the Shahansha. It deals 25% more or less damage depending on whether your health is above or below 50%. That means you deal a max 81 damage, which is going to kill you since you're at low health as the Sniper class, or a minimum 49 damage, which is basically swinging a pool noodle at an armed mercenary. Not a good trade-off. The Mischievous Machete in TC2, God, why does this game have so much corny alliteration, gets the Equalizer treatment. It has a 25% base damage penalty, but scales up as the user gets injured, maxing at 112. On top of that, it deploys 50% slower. Okay, so this last-ditch effort weapon takes forever to pull out, and even at full damage, it doesn't hit any meaningful thresholds. I'd say it's actually worse than TF2's version, so this is a terrible change. Now for our
Top 5 Honorable Mention.
These are weapons that received small changes, but I didn't think were interesting enough to make a separate section for. First up is the Hitman's Heatmaker, renamed the Urban Upriser in TC2. It adds Silent Killer, changes the body shot penalty to a flat damage penalty, and makes focus slightly speed up charge time, while also requiring 600 damage to charge up, instead of a few headshots or assists. Overall, it's largely the same weapon and still lacks an identity. Next up is the Bizarre Bargain, known as the Skullbuster in TC2. The only change is that the more heads you have, the less quickscope damage you deal, which doesn't mean much with how much worse quickscopes are in TC2. It is quite literally the same weapon. Then we have the stock SMG, renamed the MAC-10 in TC2. You have 30 ammo instead of 25, 7 base damage instead of 8, and 60 reserve ammo instead of 75. You notice how the numbers are barely changed? Because that's how they feel in game as well. Finally, we have the Tribal Man's Shiv, now called the Gustabe in TC2. Bleed duration and damage penalty are slightly reduced, and it gets a small firing speed bonus. The problem is, Sniper only uses melee for quick kills, and this thing still isn't effective at finishing enemies fast. And with that, we have finally reached the end for Sniper. It's kind of funny to me that the TC2 team did such a good job with the primaries and then, I don't know, fell asleep making the secondaries and melees. Like, they somehow made the weakest selection of weapons even worse. But whatever, at least the rifles are fun to play against now. Spy video coming out soon. I really want to get this series over with. Thank you for Vaco for helping out. I'll see you guys next time.